Hi guys, Vishnu here. Welcome to Chess Simplicity. So hope you're all doing fine and good. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the FIDE Laws of Chess. So what is FIDE? So FIDE is the World Governing Chess Federation. It is the apex organization that controls all other federations in the country. I mean, for example, the country that I represent, India, has got a federation called AICF, All India Chess Federation. So the AICF comes under the FIDE. FIDE monitors AICF and similarly other countries, the respective chess federations of other countries, whether they follow the rules and regulations or not, etc. and so and so. So it is called as FIDE. It is also called as the World Chess Federation. So they have laws of chess. They have declared the laws of chess, and you are supposed to play the game of chess observing these laws of chess. I've already explained the basic rules of movements of pieces, algebraic notation and so on in the first two videos. If you want, you can watch it again, but this video will be specifically covering about the laws of chess. So once again, we'll be going through a few things such as the movement of pieces on the board, which we have covered in the earlier classes. You can skip this if you want, if you already know it, but I definitely recommend you do watch it once again because it would be a revision, and I'll also be covering some of the points which I missed out in the previous videos. So you can see that I'm going to follow I'm going to explain you all these things based on the PDF document that I downloaded from their official website of FIDE, the FIDE Laws of Chess. So I'll be going it one by one. So in this video, I'll be covering only these five aspects. The nature of the objectives of the game of chess, the initial position of the pieces on the chessboard, the moves of the pieces, the act of moving the piece, the completion of the game. These 5 articles I'll be covering, and the rest I'll be covering in the subsequent videos. So let's begin anyway without any delay. So we'll start with the basic rules of play. So it says the nature and objectives of the game of chess. What is the objective in the game of chess? The game of objective is to win the game, that is checkmate the opponent's king. So the game of chess is played between two opponents who move their pieces alternatively on a square board called a chess board. The player with white pieces commences the game, and player is said to have the move when his opponent's move has been made. I hope you understood. It's very clear and it's simple. What they have mentioned it in this document. So they say that it's played between two people, the game of chess, and each move makes a play alternately, one after another. And who has the right to make the first move? White has got the right to make the first move because that's a rule. That's how you start the game. And after that, black makes his move, and then again white makes his next move, and so on. And the objective of each player is to checkmate the opponent's king. Each one of them will be trying to checkmate the other. So you cannot capture the opponent's king. So you can only say that your opponent's king is under check if there is a threat by one of the pieces or the pawns. And if opponent has no legal move after giving a check, that means that you have checkmated the opponent's king. I've already made a video on check, checkmate and stalemate. Very detailedly I will explain the differences between check, checkmate and stalemate. If you want, you can watch it once again, and I've covered everything under that, so I'm not going to repeat it again in this video. Okay, so let's go to the initial position of the chess board. So let me show you the board. So this is a chess board, 8 into 8 vertical columns called files, 8 horizontal rows called ranks. So 8 into 8 is 64 squares. So this is how you set the chessboard. I've already told you the minor mistakes they make while setting up the chessboard. They misunderstand the placement of the king and the queen here. They sometimes place the king on the light square and the queen on the dark square. So the easy way to recall this is that white, who has got the one who is playing white, places his queen on the light square. One who plays black places his queen on the dark square. So the dark colored queen is placed on the dark square, and the light colored queen is placed on the light square. This is an easy way to remember while setting up the pieces on the chessboard. Well, I mean setting the pieces in an over-the-board tournament, not on playing online chess. These rules which I'm talking about, the basic rules of chess, of course, it applies to online chess too. But there are certain things like which doesn't apply to online. For example, there is something called as touch move. Touch move means you touch a piece with the intent of making a move, and then you prefer not to do so. Well, that is not allowed, because when you touch a piece, you should mandatorily move it if it has got any legal move. And in over the board chess tournament, if you touch a piece and later on realize that if moving the piece could be a blunder, then you cannot take it back. You have to immediately move the piece to some square which it can move, or you can also use the piece to capture any of your opponent's pieces, but at any cost the piece which you have touched should be moved unless it has got no legal moves at all. So this rule doesn't apply to online chess, because in online chess there is no such thing called as touch move. But whereas in an over the board tournament, when you're playing in a tournament, there is definitely this rule called touch move, and it applies to all the games that you're playing in a tournament. So be careful about it. Okay, so this is how the pieces are arranged. 8 pawns are arranged in front of the pieces. Similarly for black, and the rook is arranged at the edges, followed by the knight, bishop, queen, and the king. Okay, the player with white makes the first move. Okay, and you cannot capture your own pieces. You can only capture your opponent's piece. Similarly, if your pieces is on the way, say that I'll explain it later. So let me go to the bishop. Okay, so this is a bishop. You call this piece a bishop. So bishop can move only on diagonally, and this is a light squared bishop, so it can move only on light squares. It cannot switch its color and start moving on dark squares. That's not possible. You have another bishop on a dark square, which you can use it to move on dark squares, whereas this bishop can move only on light squares. Similarly, a dark square bishop can move only on dark squares. It can also not switch its colors. So bishop, queen, and rook are called as long range pieces because they can move far. They can move away far to a farther distance, and also shorter distances too. So bishop, it can go to this A8 square, say this in one go. Similarly, the queen, the rook, all can move, are all called long range pieces because of its mobility, because of its superior mobility it has got in the chessboard. This is the rook. Okay, the rook can only move vertically or horizontally. It cannot move diagonally. As I mentioned it by the arrows here. So the rook, which is on C3 square, can move only on vertically or diagonally. This is how the rook is. This is how you should move the rook. This is how it works. The queen. The queen can move in all directions: diagonally, horizontally, vertically, unless it is obstructed by its own pieces. Suppose if there was a white pawn over in G6, then it can move only to F5. It cannot go to H7, or it cannot capture G6. So whereas if there was an opponent's piece on G6 or H7, then it can capture that G6 piece. But even if there is an opponent's piece on G6, it cannot move to H7 because it is still obstructed by one of the pieces. So it has to capture the piece on G6, then move to H7. This is the knight. It can jump over, it can hop over other pieces over the board. It moves in L shape, and like as you can see from the board, it's very clear that it can move to 8 different squares. Not always it can move at 8 different squares. It depends where it is placed. Now it is placed on C3, so it can move to 8 different squares. Suppose if this knight was on A1 over here, then it can only move to c2 and b3, 2 squares. So it also depends upon the placement of pieces, but it always moves in L shape. It can hop over the pieces and it switches its color with every move that it makes. For example, I play knight e4. From dark square I went to a light square. From light square I'm moving to a dark square again. Again from dark square I can move to another light square. So with every move it keeps switching its color, unlike a bishop which is always on the same colored square. So I talk about the differences between a knight and bishop in the previous two videos. If you want, you can watch it. Also, I'm bringing a new video specifically on the differences between a knight and bishop. So do watch that. It will be coming up in the future. But the knight cannot move vertically or diagonally or horizontally. It can only move in L shape. It cannot move on the same file or on the same rank or diagonally like this. It is illegal to move your knight that way. You cannot do it. It is against the rules. Pawn. You can move the pawns forward. You can only move the pawns forward. You cannot move it backwards. Once you have made the move, the pawn doesn't go backwards. And in its first move, the pawn is in its initial position, that is on the second rank. In its first move, you have the freedom or the choice to move your pawn one square forward or even 2 squares forward. Say that I'm moving my pawn 2 squares forward, and thereafter I cannot move my pawn again 2 squares forward, because that's not the rule how it works. Only on its first move you can move 2 squares forward, and thereafter you can move 1 square forward, 1 square forward, and 1 square forward, and so on. And you can move your pawns diagonally, but only if you want to capture any of the opponent's pieces. Say that there was a opponent's black knight on c3 over here in this square, then you can move to c3 like this. Else you cannot. Okay, I hope you understood. And there is another route called en passant. I already explained en passant in one of my previous videos, so you can watch it. I'll mention it in the links or the description so that you can watch it again. I'm not going to repeat it again, so let's not waste any time on that, and let's go to the next thing. This is the king. The king is a versatile piece. It can move vertically, horizontally, diagonally. It's a very versatile piece, but it can only move 1 square at a time, whether it be diagonal or horizontal or vertical. Okay, this is called as castling. Okay, while castling, make sure that you move the king first and then the rook. Say that in a over the board tournament, you wanted to castle and you try to castle by moving the rook first and then the king like this, then it's wrong. See, it will not allow me to castle because that's not how it works. Castling should always be done by moving the king first and then place the rook. So in kingside castling is done this way. The king moves 2 squares towards the right and the rook also moves 2 squares to the left. Whereas in queenside castling, the king moves 2 squares to the right. In case if you are playing black, it's right. If you're playing, so I'll call it left here because I'm playing white. So the king moves to the left 2 squares and the rook has jumped 3 squares to the right. Let's come to d8. Don't put your king on b8 and the rook on c8. That is wrong way of queenside castling. Queenside castling is always done this way. So keep that in your mind. And don't touch your rook first if you want to castle. Always touch your king first and then move the rooks to the required place. And once the pawn reaches the 8th rank, you have the choice. I'll show you that. So that I reach my pawn to the 8th rank, which is called the promotion square. I have the choice to turn it to any piece that I want. Now it is on the 7th square and I'm moving into the 8th square. I have the choice to move the, I have the choice to choose the piece that I want my pawn to promote to. That is, I can choose either a queen or a rook or a bishop or knight. Choosing a piece which is below the rank of the queen is called as under promotion. That is, choosing a pawn to be promoted to either a rook, bishop or knight is called as under promotion. And choosing a queen is called as a normal way of promoting. For example, if I choose rook here, it's called as under promotion. Similarly, when the black pawn reaches the 1st rank, even black has got the right to choose a piece that he can promote to. Okay, the act of moving the pieces. Each move must be made with one hand only. So in a tournament, in an over the board tournament, make sure that you don't use both the hands. You play one move with one hand and you play the other move with another hand. I don't think that's possible. If you're a left-hander, use always only your left hand, and if you're a right-hander, use always the right hand to move your pieces. Don't switch your hands and move your pieces with only one hand, as it is mentioned here. Okay, so say that you don't want to move a piece, but say that one of your pieces is coinciding with one of the squares. For example, over the board, just I'll go to the initial position. Well, here it's all arranged perfectly well and exactly aligned to the center. But in over the board chess tournament, you can set up your pieces. It so happens that by mistake, when you set up the pieces fast, it so happens that one of these pieces might coincide be on a different square, slightly half on one square and half on another square. So if you don't intend to make you don't want to create a touch move rule inadvertently. To avoid such things, what you do is you can say to your opponent that I adjust or adoube. The spelling, it's a French word. J is silent. J apostrophe A-D-O-U-B-E. It's pronounced as adoube, or in English it is called as I adjust. So if you say I adjust, the opponent will immediately say okay, and he gives you the freedom to adjust all your pawns and pieces on their respective squares. So he will not consider it as a touch move. Okay, and then you can start making your intended moves. So that's what is mentioned here, provided that he first expresses his intention. For example, by saying J, it's adoube or I adjust. The player having the move may adjust one or more pieces on their squares. Okay, so this is the touch move rule that I was talking about. If the player having the move deliberately touches on the chessboard one or more of his own pieces, he must move the first piece touched which can be moved. Also, do remember that, say that in a position, I'll show you a position. See that, imagine that you have got such a position and you are playing white, and instead of you by mistake touch this knight, black knight. So it means that you have to capture this knight with any of your pieces in case if there is a legal move available to do so. In this case you can. So you will be, even if it is a blunder, You will have to play that because you have because it's called a touch move rule, and you will have to play it. So you will have to take f takes g5. So kids, many kids are not aware of this touch move rule when they start playing chess, and they, fall prey to this rule because they are unaware about it. So that's the reason I'm making this video, to make it clear all the FIDE laws of chess. These are the very basic laws of chess which every chess player should know while starting to play chess. Okay. One or more of his own pieces, he must move the first piece touched which can be moved. One or more of his opponent's pieces, he must capture the first piece touched which can be captured. One piece of each color, he must capture the opponent's piece with his piece, or if this is illegal, move or capture the first piece touched which can be moved or captured, and so on. So I think I made it very simple and clear for you, so you can understand that you don't need to read this again. So this is what they're talking about, the castling. The way to castle: deliberately touches his king and rook, he must castle on this side if it is legal to do so. Deliberately touches the rook and then his king is not allowed to castle on that side on that move, and the situation shall be governed by Article 4.3a. So I think I made it clear. If you intend to castle, move your king first. Touch your king first and move the king, and then play the rooks. Don't touch your rook first, because if you touch your rook first, it will be considered as a touch move and you cannot castle. And another thing while castling is, you will lose the right to castle in case you have already moved your king to some other square. Say that you moved your king to f2, your king is on e1, and you moved your king to f2. Your king is on e1, but due to some reason you had to move your king to f2. Then later on you came back to e1, and the rook is on h1. Now if you try to castle like this, it won't be possible. You will lose your right to castle once you have moved the king. And the same thing applies to a rook as well. For example, say that the rook on say that you have a rook on h1 and the king on e1. Now due to some reason you had to move your rook to g1. For some reason you had to move your rook to g1, and then later on you went back to h1, and then now you decide to castle from king to g1 and rook to f1 like this. It wouldn't work because you have lost the right to castle once you have moved your king or your rook. So please keep that in your mind. Don't make such mistakes. Okay, the game is declared as won by the player one who has checkmated his opponent's king. And the game is also won by the player whose opponent declares he resigns. This immediately ends the game. So if an opponent chooses to resign, saying that say that he has got no way to win, and if he feels that he is pointless in playing, then your opponent might resign the position. So you can declare that you have already won the game, and same applies to you as well. Okay, and what are the three main rules? There are 5 rules in which your game can be declared as a draw. So I've already spoken about stalemate, which is one of these rules, and I've already spoken about 50 move rule also, and I've also talked about the position repeating 3 times. So we'll go to that one once again. The game is drawn when the player has to move, has no legal move, and his king is not in check. The game is said to end in stalemate. This immediately ends the game, provided the move producing the stalemate position was legal. So stalemate is one way. So stalemate is one way where you can end your game in a draw. Okay, and the game is drawn when a position has arisen in which neither player can checkmate the opponent's king with any series of legal moves. The game is said to have ended in a dead position. For example, both your opponent and you have no pieces and pawns left, so it is declared as a dead game because there is no way you can checkmate your opponent's king, and the opponent cannot also do anything about it, and it will be declared as a draw. Not always it will be without any pieces or pawns, but I'm just giving you an example. The game is drawn upon agreement between two players during the game. This immediately ends the game. So if say that you have reached an equal position, both of you realize that there is no point in continuing because it is completely equal, and so then you can end the game in a draw by offering a draw to your opponent. It's called as a draw offer, and if the opponent accepts it, you can immediately sign the peace treaty and end the game, declare it as a draw. And the game may be drawn if any identical position is about to appear or has appeared on the chessboard at least 3 times. So I've already told this with an example, I guess. In the previous video, you can watch it. And finally, the game may be drawn if each player has made it at least 50 consecutive moves without movement of any pawn or without any capture. So in a game where there might be a position where you cannot move the pawns forward because it is obstructed by the opponent's pawn or pieces. And so if the game continues for 50 moves that way without any pawn movement or without any capture, then you can declare the game as a draw. This normally happens in the end game, this 50 more rule. Okay, so that's it guys for about the basic rules of playing chess. Let me go to the top. Yeah, the basic rules of play. FIDE Laws of Chess. I'll give a link in the description so that you can download this PDF file so that you can read it yourself and get acquainted with all the rules. I insist all of you that you make all these basic rules very thorough so that you don't make any silly mistakes in your game and thereby cost your game. You don't want to lose a game making some silly mistakes, right? So that's the reason. So I'll give you a link, and I'll also upload this file. It's free to download. You don't have to pay any dime for this. It's given by the official FIDE web. It is given on the official FIDE website, fide.org, I believe. So you can also go there alternatively and navigate to the FIDE rules page and download FIDE Handbook page and download the FIDE rule book. But in order to make it easier, I will also give it a link in the description of this video. Okay guys, so I hope you all enjoyed this video. In case you did, and in case if you liked it, please give me a thumbs up and do subscribe to my channel. So if you have any doubts or comments, please if you have any doubts or anything, please post it in the comments so that I can know about it and what kind of videos you expect from me and what kind of videos you actually want. Please post in the comments so that I can bring more and more videos for you. So thanks a lot. It's Vishnu again, signing off from Chess Simplicity. Take care of yourself. Bye guys. Have a nice day.